Welcome everyone to Tales from the 90s, your retro time machine back to my favorite time period, the 1990s. This week, episode 66, we're going back to February in 1998. Let's go.
Viewer warning. The following program contains material that may be too intense for some viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Marathons, wrestling wars, and more yawns. Play kickball in the street, man, those days can't be beat. Tales from the 90s never die.
That's right, we're on exactly 18 years back into the future. If you were born in this year, you're now an adult, which makes me feel super freaking old. Because I was close to being an adult at this time. I was 14 at the time, and in 7th grade for the second time, which I've talked about before. I'll talk about it just a little bit here, but yeah, like I said, failed the 7th grade because I was an idiot and didn't do anything in school. You'd think that I would, because of things going on at home, I would focus on school or something else, but no, not me. I just didn't do the work. Almost failed a second time. Luckily, they offered me summer school that year. I guess the year before I was just so bad I couldn't do summer school at all. They're like, nope, that ain't even going to work. But anyway, this is our 8th trip through 1998. And I do want to mention there's a bonus episode coming out this Saturday, if you watch this when it comes out. By the way, I'm recording it the day it comes out because I've been working on this freaking album I've been working on back on 90s Country. It's got it had 11 songs. And I just getting in my own head, this part didn't sound right, re-record the whole thing, and then I got to re-record this song, and I didn't like the sound of the microphone, and just all that, all the stuff that gets in your head. If you ever tried to record any music, you get super self-conscious. I mean, unless you've been doing it forever and just know, it's me, so I'm always self-conscious. But anyway, I said it had 11 songs. I went ahead and got freaking ideas in my head as I was listening to music when I went to sleep, and ended up writing 2 more songs. I just recorded them, so I got to go through that whole process again. So anyway, that should be out, who knows freaking when. But anyway, the bonus episode will be out Saturday. It is February the 21st. It's me ranking the Garth Brooks studio albums, 1 through 14. I'm just going to rank which ones I think are the best. And just because one comes in last doesn't mean I don't like the album. I like all of his studio albums, but I mean, if you're ranking something, it's got to be a first and got to be a last. But anyway, we're here for February 1998. Like I said, exactly 18 years ago, because I'm recording this in February of 2026. And by the way, plan on doing the podcast just like I am, but I do have a heart. It's not really a surgery. It's they go in through the groin muscle, or the artery down there, the femoral artery, and put a catheter up there, and they're going to... See, what I have, if you don't know, is called a WPW, which is Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. It was something I was born with. Didn't really notice at all as a kid, or I maybe noticed a few times when I was younger, but as I got older, I noticed it more. It's where my heart rate will be just fine, and then randomly, whether I'm working out, walking, sitting and doing nothing, it'll just go from normal, whatever. It's normally around 60 to 80 is what it's resting, up to the high, up to 220. It's gotten as high as 228. And it is scary as hell. The first time it happened really bad, I was at Planet Fitness doing the Stairmaster, which I don't think I'll ever do again, even if this thing's corrected, just because of just the memories. But anyway, the hospital was right there, and I went, and they were about to give me this medicine to slow my heart down. And I found out from the doctor that if they'd have given that to me, it probably would have killed me, because I wasn't having a heart attack or a, AFib type thing where, a reason for the heart rate, other than something inside the heart. In other words, if my heart rate would have went back to normal and that medicine kicked in, I would have went bradycardia, which is low heart rate, and probably would have flatlined. So that scared the crap out of me. But they caught the WPW on the EKG because I was having this thing for 30 minutes. Sometimes it's instant. I'll feel it, and it'll be back to normal. But anyway, long story short, I was born with this thing, didn't realize it, and just finally, I need to have the surgery to correct it because the doctor said it was getting worse. And it's not always something that can just go back to normal. And sometimes, I have to do these. Sometimes bending over will stop it. Sometimes I have to like bear down like I'm trying to take a crap. Luckily, I haven't crapped myself. But or blow into like those medicine syringes. You have to hold it so where no air can get. You can't push the thing out, and you got to blow. I don't want to do it here because I might set one off. But there's times where it feels like it's not going to stop. And it's not just, not something that's harmless. A lot of people do live with it. But it can lead to an actual heart attack or other serious problems or weakening the heart. So I need to get it done. And anyway, they're going to go in there with the catheter. They're going to have to cause me to have one, which I didn't realize at the time. Like, I knew they were going to do the catheter and I have an extra pathway. Like a normal heart, it circulates. Well, I have an extra electrical pathway. And sometimes when the heart rhythm is going, it'll go into this pathway and goes nuts. So they got to cause me to have this WPW episode, and then find where that pathway is, burn it out, and then once they get it burned out, try to get me to have another one just to make sure they got it. Like I'm scared to death of this. Like a million things could happen. I could have a heart attack. I'm also scared they might find some blockages I didn't know, and next thing I know, I'm waking up because I'm like half sedated, they say, during this, so I'll be partially conscious. I'm just afraid of hearing the words clear and the words, we're going to have to put him out. We need to do stents. We need to do open heart something. So pray for me. Hopefully everything's fine. That's supposed to be a Wednesday. I know these podcasts come out on Wednesday. Depending on how nervous I am that week, I'm planning on still recording one. I'll hopefully get it done Monday and get it uploaded. So if you see one uploaded, don't mean technically I'm alive. I could be dead. And you could be seeing the final podcast ever. I should title it Possibly From the Grave. That's just me. Me and my humor. And sorry I'm taking 5 hours on this intro and explaining stuff about me. I know, we're here for the 90s. We're here for February of 1998 to be specific. If you've never seen this before, I pick a random month and year, go back and look at the 90s through the lens of pop culture, music, news, wrestling, sports, and also personal experiences. So this week we're going to start with some wrestling. Of course, 1998, a big year in wrestling, like a huge year. February 15th, WWF had their In Your House, No Way Out of Texas. And this is the 20th of the In Your House pay-per-views. Of course, those were the ones that were originally only 2 hours and only charged $20, I think, or maybe it was $15 at the time. I can't remember. But they charged less than a Royal Rumble, WrestleMania type thing. But this is the last one to actually use the In Your House logo on the ring. And soon they would phase out the In Your House thing and just give each pay-per-view its own unique name. It was also the first pay-per-view to have the In Your House... not In Your House, but No Way Out as the name. Of course, that would become a pay-per-view going forward for a few years. They don't have No Way Out anymore, I don't believe, unless NXT uses it. I don't keep up with them, sorry. I have a hard enough time keeping up with Raw and SmackDown with all the stuff I got to do. But this is being in Texas. Shawn Michaels was, of course, advertised as one of the big, for the big matches. But the problem is the month before at Royal Rumble was that casket match with Undertaker where he got sent over the ropes, and hit his back on the casket and caused the severe back pain that eventually led to him retiring for 4 years. So he wasn't, able to make it to this. He was barely able to make it to WrestleMania to defend the title against Stone Cold. Like I said, before he retired. Let's see. The main event was so-called unsanctioned, and that's what they use. They always use the word when they don't do it much anymore, but they used to call, say something was unsanctioned to get everybody to think oh, anything can happen. The company doesn't even want to sanction this as an actual match, so they don't get sued. They make it sound like absolute chaos is gonna happen. People are gonna get killed and stuff. But it was Stone Cold, Owen Hart, Cactus Jack, and Chainsaw Charlie defeated Triple H, Savio Vega, who was replacing the injured Shawn Michaels, and the New Age Outlaws. And of course, Shawn Michaels and Triple H DX. And you think New Age Outlaws DX, but at this time they weren't actually in DX yet. They were just kind of they would help them out because they were another heel tag team. But of course, the night after WrestleMania, after Shawn Michaels loses the title to Stone Cold, then retires, Triple H announces he's taking over DX, officially brings in the New Age Outlaws, and then brings in X-Pac, which of course was previously Six and WCW. He just left, he was in the NWO. And before that, the 1-2-3 Kid. Sean Waltman is his real name. But anyway, and of course Chyna too. I don't want to gloss over her because she wasn't just their like manager or valet. Everybody knows how tough Chyna was. But yeah, just kind of like one of those in-between pay-per-views between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. Just, an 8-man just trying to get, the storylines. Of course, the New Age Outlaws were feuding with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie at the time. But that was February 15th. February 21st, ECW held their CyberSlam event. Now, they were doing pay-per-views at the time, but this wasn't actually a pay-per-view. This was still like a super card. It might have been on... I don't know if they were doing these online or if that was just the name. I believe they might have been doing these, broadcasting these online, which for the time would have been probably really hard to watch unless you had the best internet. And even the best internet back then was still dial-up. There was no Wi-Fi, no Ethernet, no high-speed, nothing. But it was the third CyberSlam event, and the event actually began with a 10-bell salute to Louis Spicolli, who had just passed away. He worked for WCW at the time, but really made his name in ECW. He passed away, sadly, from like a drug and alcohol overdose, which sadly happens in wrestling a lot, but not as much as some people make you want to think, not to get off on a tangent there, but everybody's like, oh, wrestling causes this. Well, if you look into all businesses, it's not just wrestling. It's just, there might be a higher number in wrestling due to, the schedule and a lot of people get hooked on pain pills because, regardless of what you think about wrestling, it is not fake. Trust me. I've been in wrestling matches, two of them. I don't want to say, I'm a wrestler. I don't want to, I've had 2 wrestling matches. One was a battle royal, one was a tag team match where I got in for 30 seconds. But trust me, the mat is not a trampoline. It don't even have a spring in it. Some companies do, but by the way, you're not supposed to use springs. They're, a lot of people are like, you're still using springs? They don't actually help with anything. I think if anything, they make taking the bumps worse. But anyway, not to get off on that tangent. But yeah, Louis Spicolli passed away, and they had a 10-bell salute to him, which is what they do in wrestling as a tribute. One of my many jobs in wrestling is actually ringing the bell every week, and I've done more than I want to of these 10-bell salutes to wrestlers who passed away, whether it be well-known ones or ones just in our area. Yeah, so like I said, I've done way more 10-bell salutes than I've ever wanted to do, and because you never want to lose anybody. But the main event for the CyberSlam show, Shane Douglas and Bam Bam Bill, Triple Threat, defeated RVD and Sabu, which is, of course, Sabu, my favorite ECW wrestler of all time. The very next night, February 22nd, WCW held, WCW/NWO. It was during that time where they were they would brand all the pay-per-views and all the everything with WCW, NWO. But it was Super Brawl 8 from San Francisco, California. And like I said, Louis Spicolli had passed away. He was with WCW. He was originally supposed to face Larry Sabisco on this show. So obviously that match didn't happen. But another thing that didn't go to plan was Booker T defeated WCW World TV Champion Rick Martel to win the title. And Martel actually won this title from Booker T on the previous Nitro. But anyway, Martel was supposed to win the match. But I believe he torn a ligament in his knee, I think. And they had to call an audible, so instead of just having Martel keep, because he knew it was bad, instead of having Martel just win and keep the title, they actually, switched it with Booker T. And, normally that's something that'll happen in wrestling. However, what happened next is not normal because normally, you have a match that's over, regardless of the outcome. But the winner of this match was supposed to face, in the very next match, for the title, was supposed to face off with Perry Saturn. So, you got, it was supposed to be Rick Martel versus Saturn. They obviously, it depends on, I don't want to give too many secrets of wrestling away, but the good wrestlers will know how to wrestle in the ring. You won't have, nowadays with the younger generation, it seems like they plan out every single move from start to finish. Back in the old days, they could just do this stuff, like Ric Flair talks about wrestling like guys like Ricky Steamboat, where they didn't even talk about anything. They maybe knew the end because, that's what the promoter or the booker wants the end to be. But sometimes they didn't even say a word to each other. They just look at each other and know what's next. But yeah, Booker T had to face Perry Saturn next, and that match wasn't even planned. So they did this all in the ring, and I don't know if I've ever seen this, the Super Brawl show. So I need to go watch it just to see how they did. But being two pros like Booker T and Perry Saturn, I have no doubt that they knew exactly what to do. They were raised in the old school. But Booker T retained the title in that match. WCW World Cruiserweight Champion Chris Jericho retained his title against Juventud Guerrera in a title versus mask match, where, of course, Juvi had to lose his mask after that. And, of course, Juventud Guerrera is just insane nuts now. He's, like, gone off the deep end. Too many drugs, too many blows to the head. But this was the time they wanted to unmask all the cruiserweights. Ray fought against it for a while, but eventually nothing he could do and lost his mask to Nash, and his character after that was just crap. It wasn't until he came back to WCW and he came back with a mask that people actually respected him again, because he was just acting like he looked like a miniature version of Conan, and he was acting like an idiot too. I'm sorry, just so stupid. But anyway, you can tell I didn't like the Filthy Animals team in WCW. But the Outsiders with Dusty Rhodes, yes, even Dusty Rhodes joined the NWO at one point, defeated WCW World Tag Team Champions, the Steiner Brothers, with Ted DiBiase to win the titles. And this was the actual beginnings of the Big Papa Pump character for Scott Steiner. Because in this match, Scott turned on his brother Rick, causing the Outsiders to win the titles, and Scott to join the NWO. And that's when he would start dyeing his beard, and start, that Big Papa Pump character, which really wouldn't come to fruition until after the NWO. Was definitely the beginnings here, and everybody knows how deranged Scott Steiner is, and his promos they're not good. They're so bad they're good. But the main event of this show, actually I should mention the Steiners had just won the titles from the Outsiders like 2 weeks before on Nitro. The main event of the show was Sting defeating Hollywood Hogan to win the vacant WCW World Heavyweight title. And of course, this stems back to Starrcade 97 and that whole debauchery there, where the big, 18-month story, Sting finally, defeats Hogan, wins the WCW title. They all raise him up in victory. Everything's great, except it wasn't, because I'd heard the story. I've heard many stories, and I pretty much put together what happened. Hogan and Bischoff, mostly Hogan with his creative control, he thought that the whole thing with Sting wasn't tan enough. But basically what it was is they didn't think Sting was serious about it, because he hadn't been in the gym as much, according to them, and he was pale. He wasn't tan like he used to be. First of all, his character is, for the last 18 months, he's been up in the rafters, dressing like basically a goth person, the crow face paint. I keep getting freaking 6,000 messages. Anyway. Shut up, phone. Anyway. He's been up in the rafters, hiding out, and then jumping out and attacking. And at first, nobody knew whose side he was on, because, there was a whole thing. Was he with the NWO? Because they had an NWO fake Sting. And, people believed it was him, and Sting felt betrayed. So he, instead of helping WCW out, he just stood in the rafters for a while, and then he would come down, propel down or rappel down, however you say it, and he would, kind of just stand there. But then he started attacking the NWO and made it known he was after the NWO. But anyway, a character that's up in the rafters and everything is not going to be tan. It's not Surfer Sting anymore. It's not, the tan and he wasn't even wearing a shirt at the time. He was wearing that singlet and the trench coat and everything. But anyway, it was just basically Hogan's way of screwing another person over, because Sting was more popular than him. He hated it. He hated the fact that they booed him in WCW and made him turn heel, and all of a sudden he's a genius for turning his career around, when really they were booing him anyway. I know it's one of the biggest heel turns of all time. I'm not saying it's not. It's just Hogan and his crap. And I know he's dead, and I'm not supposed to talk ill about the dead, but come on, it's Hogan. But anyway, yeah. And the referee was Nick Patrick, who had been a heel referee for the NWO before. I don't remember if he was at this time or not. He may have been still. But anyway, Hogan tells him to count it slow, to go slow with it. Sting tells him to make sure it's a fast count because it's supposed to be like a screw job where Hogan's pinning Sting. And Nick Patrick, is told all these different things. Bischoff tells him to, I don't know if it's Bischoff or Hogan tells him to count it normal. I think it's Hogan that tells him to count it normal. I think Bischoff told him to count slow. Sting told him he's supposed to count fast. So he doesn't know what to do. He gives his normal count. But Bret Hart comes down, who had, of course, just fresh off the Montreal screw job in November. And again, this Starrcade I'm talking about is in December. I know we're in February, but I'm getting to the Super Brawl thing. Oh, I'll talk about it this week. I'm sorry. Rambling on. But anyway, Nick Patrick counts it normal, and it's supposed to look like a fast count to where, he's helping Hogan cheat to win. But the problem is, like I said, Nick Patrick counted slow because he didn't know what to do. He's told 3 different things. And I don't blame him for it, but people for years blamed him for it. Now that I know the full story, I'm sorry, Nick Patrick. But anyway, Bret Hart comes out. That was a fast count. You're screwing him, based off the screw job thing. Restart the match. Sting wins. But that didn't happen, and enough people complained about it that they're like, due to the controversy, and they had Hogan versus Sting on I think the first episode of Thunder, I think it was. WCW Thunder. And there was I don't know what the ending to that was, but there was a controversial ending, so they held up the title. So basically, Sting won it at Super Brawl, but by then it was people were over this crap. It's like Sting should have had his moment at Starrcade. Hogan screwed him out of it, plain and simple. But anyway, yay, Sting won the title here. He should have had a bigger run with this, but WCW and Hogan. That's all I got to say. But I do want to talk about something that's not wrestling now. It's the Great Fry War of 1998. I was reading about this because I like to look up, different things about the time period I'm talking about. And Burger King was trying to go after McDonald's because, of course, McDonald's is known as the king of fries, basically, throughout the world. But Burger King redesigned their fries and was giving away, I think, $1.5 million free, free orders of fries. I don't remember if you just got it or if you had to order something to get it with it. But anyway, they're really trying to push this. To show off this new recipe they got. The only thing is it kind of backfired because if you eat McDonald's fries and Burger King fries now, you still tell the difference. Burger King's still not as good as McDonald's fries. People were complaining that they were, the coating on them was weird and what was it? They left a film in their mouth and it was the French fry felt kind of pasty, and it still kind of feels that way. My favorite side from Burger King is onion rings anyway. But yeah, McDonald's fries are definitely one of the best. But to me, my favorite fry, and I know we talked about this on a bonus episode about food, my favorite French fry of all time comes from Rally's. I know in some parts of the world it's called Checkers, but where I live it's called Rally's. And they're seasoned fries, and just something in their seasoning, their fries are the best, hands down. Second favorite's probably Arby's curly fries. They came out a few years ago with crinkle cut fries. I don't know why. Why their curly fries are perfect. Why come out with some crinkle cut crap? But of course, McDonald's is there. Burger King fries aren't nasty to me. I'll eat them. Wendy's fries are kind of just whatever. Let's see some other ones. Of course, if I go to White Castle, normally I'm getting onion chips instead of fries. But I do like their crinkle cut fries from now and then. From time to time. You ever notice sometimes if you get French fries or onion rings or something like that, not every time, but a lot of times you'll get you order from Arby's. I'll order curly fries. I get the curly fries. Sometimes there'll be one crinkle cut fry in there, or you get from the onion chips from White Castle. Sometimes you'll get a fry in there. By the way, something strange. Let me know if you got a White Castle near you. Do they serve onion chips or onion rings? Because every White Castle I've ever been to has served onion chips. And if you know what they are, they're kind of just I don't even know how to exactly explain the shape. Kind of oblong. Just the onion chips is basically what I call them. Where onion rings is like the ring. These are just a coated, piece of onion or something. But anyway, That's all I've ever known from White Castle is onion chips. Except there's 2 White Castles, and they're close to each other. One in Jeffersonville and one in Clarksville, I think they are, in Indiana, where they don't have onion chips, they have onion rings, which is just strange to me. And for some reason, me and my wife both don't really like their onion rings, even though it's the same flavor, same coating and everything. Just something about, I don't know what it is about it. It's just, maybe it's just our brains be like, it's not onion chips. But let me know if you guys, if there's any other White Castle that does this, or if, like, onion chips is like the strange one. But all around Cincinnati, Columbus and Seymour here at White Castle, you can tell I go to a lot of White Castles. This kind of devolved from talking about fries to White Castles, but yeah, just my favorite fries. Some of the best fries I've had have been like the coated ones from like steakhouses, like House and the local steakhouse here, Harry's Stone Grill, which, by the way, they both have the same ranch, which is the same ranch I was introduced at Roxano's, which is a little restaurant down in Vevey, Indiana. But I'm like obsessed with this ranch. Anybody in my family knows, like I would drink this stuff, and I'm not like a super ranch person. I do like it from time to time, but normally just on salad, or I'll mix it with barbecue sauce. Anyway, I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. Trying to get this podcast done to get it uploaded the same day, and I'm just taking forever and making more work for myself. But you talk about fries, then I talk about other stuff, and then it just kind of devolves. Anyway, right now we're going to go and look at Saturday morning cartoon lineup and Nickelodeon lineup for February. This is actually February 14th. It was Valentine's Day, 1998. So let's see what's going on in the world of the Saturday morning cartoons. And sorry, I got to look over here. It's where my computer is. We're going to start on ABC. At this time, ABC and Disney had already merged, so they got, the Disney stuff on there. Where before, it was kind of all over the place, but mostly CBS had Disney stuff. And we start with 101 Dalmatians, the series, of course, based on the movies. Of course, the cartoon movies were out first, and then the one with Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil, the live-action movies. See, the live-action movies today, where they're remaking classic Disney stuff, didn't just start these days. Except they're done a lot better these days. Sorry, to get off on a tangent, there was no need to remake The Lion King. It just looks stupid, and the music in it's crap, so they should have just used the music and the voices from the original if they were just going to, make the animals look more realistic. Anyway, yeah, make it look more realistic that animals are talking. Real good job, Disney. Anyway, next is Disney's Doug, which I didn't really care for. Not that I didn't like it, it's just Nickelodeon Doug had just like an intangible, had more heart. I don't know exactly how to explain it. I felt like they just, the Disney version, they just didn't really care as much, didn't put as much into the stories. They just bought the property because it was popular on Nickelodeon. So, hey, we can have Doug on Disney now. But it wasn't just the characters that people loved, it was, the writing. But anyway, Recess, didn't like that cartoon at all. Same with Pepper Ann, sorry. The Bugs Bunny and Tweety Show, gotta have your variations of Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon and Saturday morning cartoons. Jungle Cubs, I never watched that. The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, I was never a Winnie the Pooh fan, sorry. And Science Court, I don't know what that is. Are they taking people to court for science? I don't know. No clue there. Over on CBS, we've got Beakman's World, which is sort of like a Bill Nye the Science Guy, or my favorite, Mr. Wizard's World. Then we got CBS Story Break, not sure what that is. The New Ghost Rider Mysteries. I never watched that. Of course, I love the original Ghost Rider on PBS, but I've never watched the New Ghost Rider Mysteries. I need to find that. Then we've got Wheel 2000, which was like a kid's version of the Wheel of Fortune. I believe that show was actually ending this year. I don't remember watching that. Sports Illustrated for Kids show, trying to get kind of in where NBC was with their teen stuff, with the NBA Inside stuff, but using Sports Illustrated, covering more sports, thankfully, than just basketball, because I didn't care for basketball. Then we got the Weird Al show, which I'm guessing is Weird Al Yankovic, I'm guessing. I can't think of any other Weird Al, but I never watched this, but it sounds like it would be funny. Over on Fox, we've got Mowgli, The New Adventures of the Jungle Book. I've never seen that, but obviously based on the Jungle Book. Ned's Newt, never even heard of that. Goosebumps, classic, love freaking Goosebumps. Of course, a Fox kids staple back then. The episode they had on was Night of the Living Dummy Part 2. So, Of course, Slappy the Dummy has become synonymous with Goosebumps. Toonsylvania, never watched that, but it's sort of like a horror, well, I say horror, but that and Beetlejuice and all those, they're considered horror, but it wasn't that scary. It was more funny than anything, just like Casper the Friendly Ghost cartoons. Then we've got Ultimate Goosebumps, Bride of the Living Dummy. Okay, that kind of ties in because later on I'm talking about Goosebumps books, and I'll get into that more of that later. Bride of the Living Dummy. I've never actually seen that episode of Ultimate. I don't think I've seen any of the Ultimate Goosebumps actually, so I'm gonna have to look those up. Then we got Space Goofs. Never watched that. Erie, Indiana, The Other Dimension. I seen an episode of this, but I remember watching the original Erie, Indiana. I remember talking about this before. It was actually a series that came out in '93 on NBC that wasn't really looked at as much then. Then they kind of would rebroadcast it on Disney. It started getting more of a following. Such a following that Fox actually brought it back in '97, and I thought it was a new show, and fans of Fox Kids watching Power Rangers and Goosebumps and everything, they took to that show. It's like, we want more. Well, the show had already ended like 5 years before, so they come up with Erie, Indiana, the Other Dimension to kind of just, because it's hard to continue a series that had already been stopped. The kids are obviously grown up. And then Silver Surfer, the animated series. Never seen that. And on NBC, you can guess it, teen shows that I didn't care for even as a 14-year-old. Because when they started doing this teen stuff, I was still watching the Saturday morning cartoons. They're like, why does NBC have this crap on? Anyway, here we go. Saved by the Bell, the new class. Never watched that crap. Loved Saved by the Bell, the original series. City Guys, nothing I was ever interested in. Another Saved by the Bell, the new class. An Hour of Hang Time, a show based on basketball. Didn't care. NBA Inside stuff. Could care even less. Moving on, we've also got another channel, of course, being 1998, the WB is going, and they've got some great cartoons. Pinky and the Brain, of course, spinoff of Animaniacs, became just as popular as Animaniacs. Superman, the animated series, I watched that a little bit. Not as much as Batman, the animated series, but it was still a good cartoon. Men in Black, the series, I watched a few episodes of that. The animation in that is just, I don't know, something about it just seems like really lazy. Like they didn't put much effort at all into the animation. The new Batman / Superman adventures. Never watched that, I don't think. And then we got Pinky and the Brain again. An episode of Animaniacs. And the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. Because what are we going to do with the Looney Tunes next? Oh, we're going to give them a mystery show. But yeah, that's on Saturday morning cartoons on Valentine's Day 1998. Let's see what's on Nickelodeon. Let's see here. Of course, we start at Nick at Night at midnight. Mary Tyler Moore Show. Bewitched, one of my wife's favorites. The Odd Couple. I know that's a classic one, but I never really watched that. A lot of these I've never watched before. You can tell by the ones I kind of just go through. The Bob Newhart Show. Rhoda. Happy Days, I like that one. I've seen a lot of episodes of Happy Days. I Love Lucy, one of my mom's favorite shows. Mary Tyler Moore Show again. Taxi, Newhart, Dick Van Dyke Show, Bewitched again. And then at 6 we start off with some Nick Jr. because of, I was going to say this is a weekday, but it's not. It's a Saturday, obviously. But they did have Nick Jr. on the weekends, too. Just not as long. Because normally Nickelodeon, Nick Jr. would start at like either 7 or 8 and then run till about 2 during the weekdays. And then, that's when kids start getting off school at 2. So at 2, it goes back to just quote-unquote regular Nickelodeon. But on the weekends, it was a little shorter time with Nick Jr. Anyway, we start with Gullah Gullah Island, one of my favorites. Then we got Blue's Clues. That's, of course, a Nick Jr. staple. One of the most popular shows Nickelodeon ever came out with. The Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss, which I'd never watched. Or if I did, I don't remember it. But then we got classic Nickelodeon here. Even though it was first, Saturday morning cartoons, Inspector Gadget. And then Doug, which I believe was reruns at this time because Disney had bought and bastardized the show. But still showing, I guess they still had the rights to show their version of Doug at the time. And then Muppet Babies, classic, love that. Tiny Toon Adventures, which is for me right there with Animaniacs with just crazy cartoon stuff. And then one of the first 3 original Nicktoons, along with Doug, Rugrats. The Angry Beavers I was never a fan of. Same with Hey Arnold. Our Real Monsters, that was a crazy one that I loved. Monsters Inc. from Disney completely ripped this cartoon off. Rocko's Modern Life, that was another crazy Nicktoon. I love that. You're on Nickelodeon, Charlie Brown. Well, I don't care because I never really cared for Charlie Brown. I never wanted them. Oh, Charlie Brown Christmas special, Great Pumpkin. Sorry, not disparaging anybody out there that actually likes it, but I'm not. The Charlie Brown stuff just never. I don't know, just never interested me. And here we go with Looney Tunes on Nickelodeon, the 3rd version of Looney Tunes, this Saturday morning. Well, technically this is at 1 p.m., but still. Anyway, What Would You Do? Hosted by Mark Summers, a variety/game show with various pies being thrown in people's faces. I love that. Wild and Crazy Kids. Man, this is such a great afternoon if you're watching this. February, being a Saturday is a good possibility. I was at my granny's house watching this. Or one of the random times, because I can't even remember the times we had cable because it would get shut off so much. Some of it was my doing. Ordering pay-per-views I wasn't supposed to, and the bill not being able to be paid. Thank me. Yeah, there's been a time or two where I was the reason we didn't have cable. My own dumbass fault. Calling them 1-900 numbers. And not just those, but also wrestling ones, because of course it's me. That got our phone bill up too. I don't know why I included that with the cable. I had nothing to do with the cable. I'm just telling all my secrets here. Although I've told them before, so. Anyway, we got Inspector Gadget again. Hey Dude. Man, I loved Hey Dude. It was such a funny show. The Adventures of Pete and Pete. One of those ones that never interested me. But Clarissa Explains It All. I love that show. Man, that was such a good show. The Wonder Years, which of course wasn't originally Nickelodeon, but they still had it on here. Didn't really care for that. Tiny Toon Adventures again. Figure It Out. This must have been when it, Figure Out just came out or close to it. But that was probably the last game show on Nickelodeon I watched. From when I started watching game shows to, that was probably the last one of those I watched. It was good, but you could tell Nickelodeon was starting to turn into just, something I didn't want to be a part of, especially in '99 when SpongeBob comes out. But after the '90s, I stopped watching Nickelodeon completely. Then we've got Our Real Monsters again, Doug, the Angry Beavers, and of course, being Saturday night, we get to see Snick lineup. We've got Rugrats, of course, Hey Arnold, I didn't care for that, as I said before. Keenan and Kel, another staple of Snick. The Journey of Alan Strange, I never really watched. My favorite Snick lineup is the one that either had Clarissa Explains It All, or All That, Ren and Stimpy, Keenan and Kel, and of course, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And some version of those. Not the Journey of Alan Strange or the Mystery Files of Shelby Woo or Secret World of Alex Mack. I didn't care for those shows. I never seen or could even tell you what any of the characters look like on the Journey of Alan Strange. But then we get, at 10 o'clock, we get back to Nick at Night. We get to The Wonder Years for an hour, and then an hour of Happy Days to end the day. Yeah, but like I said, even Snick wasn't interesting me that much then. But I do want to, while we're still talking about TV, I want to talk about the TGIF lineup at the time. On TGIF, they're really, this part of the year, they really weren't putting much emphasis in the stuff. They only had 2 shows, and they had it weirdly formatted. Of course, this is the first year that Sabrina the Teenage Witch was the lead show, the show that comes on. It had previously been for a few years, been Family Matters. But they were in their second season of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. But anyway, they would start with a rerun of Sabrina on a typical Friday night during this time period of the year. They'd have a rerun of Sabrina, a new episode of Boy Meets World, a new episode of Sabrina, and a rerun of Boy Meets World. And I don't know if the reruns were the same, Boy Meets World was the same one you just watched an hour ago, or a rerun from last week. But if it is, then you just watched a new episode and then a rerun from last. I don't know. It's just lazy to me. But anyway, during this time of the new episodes of Boy Meets World, it was that arc that many of us remember from Boy Meets World that were like that had us literally lasted 7 weeks. So it was like months of like, oh no, this can't be happening. Is when Corey, they go to the ski lodge for like a school field trip, and Corey, I think he's sick or injured. I can't remember, but he stays at the ski lodge with this girl that like I believe she works there. Anyway, her name's Lauren. If you're a Boy Meets World fan, you hear the name Lauren, you're like, no. Anyway, her and Corey, get to talking and everything, and she ends up kissing Corey. And of course, Topanga finds out about that, and there's a break. Like I said, there's like a 7-week arc of them breaking up, and they might get back together. Oh no, they're definitely not getting back. Like it, as fans of their relationship even more than the show, it's like, come on, please get back together. And of course they eventually do, but it was like really turn on the soap opera type element of that show, and it was a really good story arc. But it's like back when we're watching, it's like jittery, like, come on, please don't break them up, because you know how shows will do. They'll break up your favorite couples and not even think about it, just for the drama. But anyway, speaking of TV, there was a debut during this month. It was Power Rangers in Space. And I only watched a few of the episodes. I'd never actually seen it to completion. I can't remember why, other than just like moving later on and stuff. But, this was the last time that I'd actually watched Power Rangers, in total. Anyway, this only had one season. It was 43 episodes, though. And it takes place after Power Rangers Turbo and kind of brings it close to the original Power Rangers story arc. Where at the end, Zordon realizes that his power tube must be destroyed, basically killing Zordon, in order to get rid of all the evil in the world. So it's destroyed, and it turns all the monsters into like dust. And like Rita and Lord Zed and Divatox just get turned into normal looking people, and they're good all of a sudden. Like, I didn't even realize Lord Zed was like a person. I thought he was just some kind of robot or something, but apparently he was a human being. But anyway, I've seen clips of that, but never actually seen the last. Of course, that's the last episode. I think it was a 2 or 3 parter. It was Countdown to Destruction. But yeah, kind of an end of an era there. And of course, they go weird with the Power Rangers. So much futuristic stuff and cars, and just it never felt like Power Rangers again after this. Even going into space was kind of pushing it, but just it never felt like Power Rangers again. And ending this month was one of the original Fox Kids cartoons. I think like the very first one on Fox Kids Saturday morning was Bobby's World, one of my favorite cartoons of all time. It'd been on the air for 7 seasons, 81 episodes. Of course, created by Howie Mandel, loosely based on his childhood. Sort of like Life with Louie was for Louie Anderson. There was a time period when they had comics making cartoons of their kid selves, or kid versions of themselves. That was a whole niche of category of cartoons. But there's something that I got to thinking about this past week, because of course, being with Valentine's Day, I was thinking about, because I seen like a thing on Facebook. It's like remember back when we were in elementary school and people were forced to give me Valentines? That was a fun time. Not just Valentine's, but different parties you'd have at school. Like, I don't know your experience at school, whoever's watching this, but with mine, we had parties on some holidays throughout the year. Like, of course, we'll talk about Valentine's Day first. It was just such a thing. Like, you would get a list of every kid's names, and you had to buy for every kid. You couldn't just the kids you like, you give one, or kids you don't like, you can't give one. The teachers made sure you gave them out to everybody, or you'd be in trouble. But there, you would decorate like a shoe box or something like that to be your Valentine box, and everybody go around passing out the Valentines and putting them in there. And of course, everybody always had the people they liked the best, their friends or someone they might have a crush on. Out of your Valentines you'd pick out, you give them the best ones of those, and the ones you didn't like would be the crappy looking ones, or like the ones that weren't any good. And of course, picking out the right Valentine, you got to figure out whether you're gonna get something like Batman, Superman, Turtle, Power Rangers, the popular stuff. That was usually what people got, was the stuff based on TV shows or sometimes music. And then being from Cincinnati, Frisch's was a big restaurant. So the richer kids would have their parents buy these Frisch's Valentines, where it'd be a Valentine, but it'd also be a free kids meal. I remember getting a lot of those. We couldn't never, because you had to buy them. They were basically like gift cards, and only, like I said, only the rich kids could give those out. And of course, there was candy sometimes. And there would be candy for, during the the Valentine's party during school. Just kind of a fun thing, The Christmas party's kind of the same. They would have in elementary school, I don't remember doing like a Secret Santa thing. I think that might have came in middle school, if I remember. I can't remember exactly, but I don't remember in elementary school that being a thing. It was kind of just, the teacher would, have candy. There'd be, punch and... the type of stuff you'd have in a school party. And of course, there'd be the shopping during Christmas. You'd go to Santa's workshop, and if you had money, shop for stuff for people. And just such great memories. And of course, Halloween, you'd have a Halloween party. There'd be candy, and you get to dress up. And our school at Norwood View Elementary, they actually had a Halloween parade where everybody would wear their costumes and just like go around the street surrounding the school, and people would, the people that had the houses there would sit out there, and sometimes they would, throw candy out. But yeah, then you'd have, of course, candy. There's always candy involved in everything. Keep the kids sugared up so they can get through school. But let me know some of your favorite memories of holiday parties, and just things that your school might have done for different holidays, or maybe if your school didn't have them for some reason, you might have had a stricter school or something. But definitely a lot of fun with that, and a lot of fun with the kids' meal toys. It's a lot of fun researching these things. Sometimes you go down rabbit holes. So that's why sometimes it'll take me hours to research, because I'll just be, it's not just research like, oh, I got to get this done. It's like, it's real fun reading this stuff. Like, I enjoy it. McDonald's, of course, the most famous kids' meal toys with the Happy Meals, had Hercules toys based on the Disney movie that'd come out the year before. Just some weird stuff that don't seem to go together. I wrote down what each one was. Zeus football, because they played a lot of football up there in Greece and the freaking up in Mount Olympus, apparently. A Hades stopwatch, that kind of makes sense. Hercules sport bottle. Whistling discus, I guess it was like a frisbee type thing that made a whistling sound. A Phil megaphone. That character didn't need a megaphone, I'm telling you. Hercules medal, kind of like an Olympic medal type thing. Pain and Panic stick sound. I don't know what that was, but I think it was one of noise-making toys, because those were some noisy, annoying characters. And the Eye of Fate's ball, which probably had like an eyeball on it. By the way, if you hear me continuously sniffle, I'm sorry. I don't even know why. I hope I'm not getting sick. I just realized I've been sniffling a lot. I'm not on crack. I'm like, crackhead Dave. Anyway, Burger King had Mr. Potato Head. They weren't the actual like Mr. Potato Heads, but they were like these little figures and toys, I don't even know if the parts came off, but they weren't the full size. Wendy's had Wendy's on Wheels. They were like these 5 toy cars that, like, one was like a little hamburger, one was French fries. You know how they'd have that in fast food. McDonald's was famous for having the like French fry toys and stuff like that. KFC had Winter Wonder Wonder Pals. I can't talk. There was a set of these small Arctic animal figures. They had like stuff like a penguin, a walrus, a wolf. Taco Bell had Animorphs toys, which were based on a Saban, who made the Power Rangers, based on one of those shows. I didn't really care for Animorphs, to tell you the truth. Pizza Hut had Goo Goblins. These are like these gross out toys. Some would feel slimy and gooey and look like monsters. The type of stuff they had in the 90s all the time, that, look, those science kits where you can make like evil science experiments and slimy stuff. Just, that was a thing in the 90s. I can't explain. It was a thing in the 90s. Gross out stuff. Hardee's had Animaniac figures and cars. Arby's had Computer Adventures. They were like these computer-themed games. Like, there was like a pinball game, like a little mini pinball game that was like shaped like a computer. And Subway had Blue's Clues, Blue's Birthday toys. They were figures and toys from the series. They had Blue, Tickety Tock, Mailbox, and even a handy dandy notebook, which would have been the coolest thing. Like, I got a handy dandy note. I would have never wanted to write in it, even though I probably would have anyway. But anyway, some great toys. If you can find any of those on eBay, they're not going for a whole lot of money like I thought they would be. It would be cool to, like I'd never be able to afford all these, but maybe, like, get one from every month of the year of the 90s and maybe, like, be able to, like, show you on here. So maybe I'll do that in the future, get some of those and, like, show you, like, here's from this month. But anyway, a lot of great memories there. Alright, now let's talk about a movie that came out during February of 1998 that I liked. I didn't watch it or even know about it until a few years later. I seen it on HBO. It's actually based on a Stephen King short story called The Night Flyer. It's a really good movie. A lot of people have probably never heard of it because it's not one of his bigger ones. But it's about this guy that works for a tabloid type newspaper, and he's always finding these werewolf from Mars, and Elvis is still alive, and he works at a bakery or some weird crap like that. One of them type newspapers, like the National Enquirer. But anyway, he's assigned to this story they hear about this, the Night Flyer, about this. Apparently, he's a vampire that, like, flies airplanes, so he's always flying in and, like, killing his victims, and, he's chasing him down in this, and it's a really, like, the reveal of the Night Flyer, especially in, like, his, like, scary vampire form where he stretches his face up, like, that image haunts me. I'm telling you. I'm actually gonna put the picture in here. It's like, it's not like the scariest thing in the world, but to me, when I seen it, I was like, ah! Like, even as an adult, I was like, what the freak is that thing? But yeah, it was a really good movie. But that actually got me to thinking, watching it on HBO, of how the different ways we consume movies these days. Not just TV shows, but I'm more specifically talking about movies. I mean, it's obvious, everybody knows, talking about the 90s, Blockbuster and all that. But if you really stop and think about just how different it is these days, especially if you're watching this and you're young enough, you never went to a video rental store and never seen a VHS. I gotta sneeze, hold on. I swear I better not be getting sick, because I'm going to get this eye infection crap going again. But anyway, sorry about the interruption there. I got to blow my nose. But yeah, it got me thinking about that. Like, back then we used to, when it was just VHS, before DVD days, you would have different ways you get movies. You either, the biggest way, of course, the most popular with everybody, was go to Blockbuster, where you'd rent a movie. Of course, the new movies usually, they had to be back, depending on the time period in the video store. Usually you'd have 2 or 3 days, like the weekend, but sometimes you'd only have a day. But with movies that weren't newer, you would have like a week, and you'd rent those, and you would, like you said, you can get snacks. You could also rent video games. It was just a whole process, going to the store, pulling the tape up, and, because they had the box in front of it that you'd actually get it in. And then you look behind it to see if they actually had the tape there. It's like, the tape's not there. But, yeah, just like, and of course you take it home, put it in the VCR, it'd be a whole family thing, usually. Like we're going out and renting a movie. For us, we went to Hollywood Video more than Blockbuster, I think, just because I think it was cheaper, and it was, like, it was basically just because it was cheaper. They had all the same stuff that they had at Blockbuster, pretty much. But, yeah, we would rent a few of them, and then, it'd be a family thing. We'd all watch them, when we were allowed to. Me and my brother Josh weren't in trouble for some various random reasons that my stepdad would come up with. But yeah, we'd sit down and watch it. It's like an event, like you're sitting down to watch the Super Bowl almost, I think we gather more for that than huge sporting events. But then, of course, if it's one you get throughout the week, they would leave it there until it was due back, and we would rewatch and rewatch and rewatch and rewatch these things. And of course, if you didn't have it there and you had cable, of course you had, there'd be like a huge deal whenever a movie finally made it to cable. It's like, it's finally coming to cable. It'd be either on TBS or TNT or USA or AMC, one of those type things, although they mostly had classic movies. But really the big thing was is if you had like HBO or Cinemax or the Movie Channel or Showtime, one of those, or even the package with all four of those, especially on Saturday nights. Saturday nights would be the night that new movie, I think they still might be, where they premiere a new movie on HBO. And of course HBO would always have the bigger ones first before the other channels. But yeah, that's the big thing is, of course, and also I do want to mention the pay-per-view movie, especially when digital cable really took off, which was, around this time. That, pay-per-view movies, that's where the movies would go after the theaters. Because, of course, there's going to the theaters. I failed to mention that. Of course, that's a big deal. I didn't get to do that as much as a kid. Mostly for, like, school field trips, go see school movies and, stuff. Those type of movies that are, kids appropriate for school. I did see Halloween Resurrection, the one with Busta Rhymes that everybody craps on. And Jason X and Freddy vs. Jason in theaters. But, of course, I was, like, I think I was an adult then. Very young adult, like, still might have even been a teenager technically, 18, 19. But anyway, like I said, those movies that debuted on HBO, that was like the big night if you had HBO and, oh, this movie's finally on here, another, event thing. Whereas today is just basically built around your schedule, which I'm not crapping on at all. It's really a good thing. I wish they would have existed then even, although it would have took some of the charm out of those days. Because in those days, like I said, you get the movie, so you'd only have a few days to view it, and if your family's viewing it now, you're not, oh, I'll catch it later, or, even like, I'll watch it in a few weeks when I got time. It'll be on streaming, so I'll just watch it. There was no streaming then. Just like with the HBO stuff. Yeah, they would replay the movies, and if you had digital cable, you could see when it was on again. But this was pre-DVR and TiVo days, so you couldn't just record the movie and watch it later. That would be in a couple years. They might have had TiVo at this time, but certainly not in our area. We never even got TiVo in our area with what was Time Warner Spectrum now. But we had the DVR, which is just, the digital video recorder, which I loved. I used that thing up so much. Store stuff on there and then have to delete it to get new stuff. And then I would transfer it to tapes. This is like 2003, 2004. I love that freaking DVR. But anyway, you had to watch the stuff then. You had to watch it when it was on or catch the replay of it. And, but these days, a lot of people take it for granted the convenience we have these days. Like, you can watch, if it's on streaming, I know the whole joke is they, watch it now because they're going to take it off. And they do that, and that's annoying. But, usually if something's on streaming, you got at least a couple months. You got a time frame there you can work with. Whereas, it's on right now, better go watch it. We're so spoiled these days with the internet in general has just, spoiled us, and having smartphones, so you basically always have a TV on you. Like, back in my day, I was riding the bus, not 98, but like even 2004. And I thought it was such a huge deal that I finally got one of those radios that also had TV channels on them. Not an actual TV, but audio of the TV channels. So you could tune in, like, our local channel 5 was NBC, 9 was CBS, or ABC. It was originally CBS, and then 12 was CBS, and Fox was 19. But you could actually tune those channels in and actually listen to it. And I thought this was like groundbreaking. Like, I can listen to the news. I can listen to like, I was on the bus late at like 7 o'clock, I can listen to Wheel of Fortune. Like, I thought it was like the greatest thing in the world. But these days, you literally can watch all this stuff on your phone. And I for one, I know I take this stuff for granted. Like, and it kills me to think about it now. It's like, if I'd have told myself back then that I could get on my phone right now and watch the classic game shows that I love, like Press Your Luck, or these classic Nickelodeon cartoons, anytime I wanted, on YouTube or various other streaming apps, whether you're paid for or Tubi or stuff like that, and I told myself, well, I'm going to be working on just recording videos and doing this other stuff, and I'm probably not even going to watch some of this stuff, or only watch a couple minutes. I would have been like, what? You have the ability to just watch this stuff when you want and you're not doing it? That's what it's like. like, I get so busy doing things that it's like, I wish I could go back to my childhood self and be that childhood self and just go and watch these things that I never thought would be possible to watch, like, on an on-demand type basis. And that was a big thing in cable too, the on-demand, when you could, when that came into digital cable, when you could, like, I remember that was a huge deal. You could, like, it was not just pay-per-view, but also for HBO had an on-demand section. Some regular cable channels did, where you could, a few days later after something debuted, you could actually go and watch it anytime you want. It's like kind of the precursor to streaming. If anybody remembers on demand, especially for like HBO or something, they would put their movies on there, and then some of their specials, like a lot of the George Carlin comedy specials, and you could literally just go and watch this when you wanted. Of course they would take it off at different times and put it back on, just like they do with streaming. But just like, I don't know, we're so spoiled these days. If you guys have time to just stop, especially if you're my age, just stop and be a kid again. Don't worry about, this. I mean, of course, Nelton said, don't worry about your family, don't worry about your job. I'm just like, and trying to keep up with everything, and, scrolling through the phone, which I'm guilty of too. So doom scrolling, as they call it. Just stop and watch a TV show that you would have killed to just been able to pull out a phone. Like, you wouldn't even thought of that then. But just say, you would have been like, go to the TV and, use the remote, and then I'm going to put this show on, and this episode, just be a kid again, Anyway, that's my whole thing on that. I just kind of went off on a tangent of that. Just got feeling really nostalgic about it, and how, like how good these days are too. It really shows like how good of a time we live in now, that we would have killed for this stuff back then. But now I feel like a lot of us take it, including myself, take it for granted. But anyway, if there's anything like that you guys, want to comment on or anything, any memories of, and if you agree with me, whether you think people take things like that for granted. And it's like I said, I'm not just crapping on this generation or anything, the current generation. Like, oh, they take this. I'm talking about my generation. We take this stuff for granted. Some of us do. Some of it don't. I'm sure there's a lot of people that'll, but I wish I made more time for myself. I say I wish I had more time. I wish I made more time for myself to do the things that I would have killed to do back when I was 14 years old. But anyway, let's we're gonna only got a couple more topics to talk about. We're gonna talk about sports. Not a whole lot going on. This was back when the NFL was doing their Pro Bowl the week after the Super Bowl, which I think if they still did it now, they would still have more people wanting to play. But the Pro Bowl now, because people didn't want to get hurt, because they originally moved like I said, the Pro Bowl was after the Super Bowl. They would then move the Pro Bowl the week before, because there's that lull between the 2 weeks between when the teams are decided for the Super Bowl and then the Super Bowl happening. But they put the Super Bowl in the middle, and a lot of the stars, some of the stars were playing in the Super Bowl, didn't want to play in this game. They didn't want to get hurt. So now they've got it where they do flag. Which I really enjoyed the way they did it this year. They showed it was just the players having so much fun. I wish they were still doing the skills challenges like they did in the last couple of years. But it was a really fun, and I know a lot of people, oh, it's flag football, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, who wants to play this full contact football that these people get paid for? It's, they enjoy doing it. You can tell these players aren't just, drones like, oh, we're playing football for money, we don't care. You can tell they care. But, who's going to go out and, risk getting tackled? And there's been a lot of injuries that have happened in the Pro Bowl. Sorry, wipe my nose again. But, who's going to go out, with that much money on the line and having to, feed your family, and, this is your career if it's over now because of an injury in basically an exhibition game. So I like the flag football. It really makes me think about, playing football with my brothers in the street, that type of thing, the tag football. The various times we try to make flag football, we would take garbage bags and hang them out of the sides of our pocket. And you got to pull out the garbage bag as the flag. But yeah, it just, that type of stuff reminds you of what a kid's game it is and how it can be fun and not just this super serious and and people tackling to try to hurt people seemingly. And it shows how much fun the game can be. With baseball, of course, being February, the season hadn't even started yet. The players that just reported for spring training, of course, they would be ramping up for that. The spring training games really get started in March. And, of course, they had no idea what a special season 98 would be. McGuire and Sosa, that's all I got to say. Nobody had a clue how special that season would be and how instrumental that season would be in getting fans back after that 94 strike. But NASCAR had just started, of course, February, the Daytona 500. Dale Earnhardt was driving the number 3 GM Goodwrench Chevy, and he won the Daytona 500 that year. And Jeff Gordon, of course, in the 24 DuPont Chevy Monte Carlo, won the GM Goodwrench Service Plus 400 at Rockingham. And Jeff Gordon actually won his 3rd NASCAR championship in 4 years. So, he was on a huge roll then. My favorite driver of all time. I wish he was still driving. He was so good. Some books I want to talk about. I mentioned Goosebumps before. Give Yourself Goosebumps had a special edition, the first edition of this. And this was like, if you don't know what give your goosebumps, give them to somebody. Give Yourself Goosebumps it's basically choose your own adventures. I've talked about this series before, where you read it and then you get choices. Do this and go to this page. Do this and go to that page. And you'd have various endings, a lot of them bad, only a couple of them good. Well, in the special edition, this was like the first one of these special edition books. It's called Into the Jaws of Doom. This book featured 39 endings. 38 of them were bad endings where it's either game over or you die. There's only one way out, so there's only one good ending in this book. And in this book, this is different than other ones because it was bigger. But also, you get to use different items. And sometimes you can only use these items once. I think you even had to have a piece of paper to keep track of this stuff. And I think you had to have a dice because there's dice rolls. So the Choose Your Adventure books are kind of like I've always said, kind of like a half of a game, half of a book. These are even more of a game. Like, these are incredible. I've never actually got to read one of these. I'm working my way through the Give Yourself Goosebumps, the regular series. Once I get through that, I'm going to get to this. And if they have them in the library, I hope, because they sound like a lot of fun. Goosebumps presents number 18, Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. And the Goosebumps Presents books were basically the same original story from the Goosebumps, classic Goosebumps books, but with pictures from the TV series that's associated with. And Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes is one of the classic ones. Those gnomes were so freaking creepy. Like, reading about it was creepy enough, but then the visual that they actually did for the Fox Goosebumps series was just great. And then there's, like I said, there's pictures in the book of that, but the original, Goosebumps book story. So if you already had the book, you didn't have to get this, but if you were a collector of Goosebumps and a huge Goosebumps fan, of course you wanted it. And then Goosebumps Series 2000 came out with book number 2, Bride of the Living Dummy, which I didn't realize was also an episode at the very same time. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Slappy, the dummy that's synonymous with Goosebumps, basically finds a bride, a female dummy that he goes around causing chaos with. And I was thinking, this has got to be like taking off of Bride of Chucky, because I know it's not the Bride of Chucky isn't the first The Bride of horror movie. That was basically taken off of Bride of Frankenstein, obviously. But I come to find out the Bride of the Living Dummy actually came out in March here, or not March. I keep saying March, February. But Bride of Chucky wouldn't come out until October of this year. So, I'm sure it was in the works. Everybody probably knew about it. But still, whenever the book was written, they probably didn't. So, where I thought that Goosebumps actually ripped off Chucky, I wouldn't say Chucky ripped off Goosebumps, because, like I said, it was taken off of the Bride of Frankenstein. And that's basically where they both got their ideas from. But, yeah, you would think that was copying Bride of Chucky, but it actually wasn't. Move on to music now. Of course, Billboard Hot 100. And this is where music changed. Like, it would still be a couple months before I listen to pop music. But if you've watched any of these podcasts, when I talk about the Billboard Hot 100 charts, the pop music, you're used to like 11, 12 week songs at number 1, like, these big runs. This is a time when there wasn't these big, like, this was a time when it was kind of fluctuating. And country music, by the way, was my favorite. Their charts, you'd be lucky to see someone have 2 or 3 week run. It kind of flopped at this time. The Billboard charts were getting these short runs because of all these popular songs coming out, and certain country stars were getting like blowing up huge, like as you see with Tim McGraw coming up on the countdown soon. They were getting these huge multi-week number ones. Anyway, on the pop charts, we've got Together Again by Janet Jackson. I've never heard this song. It was number one for the first week in February, also a week back in January, so it was 2 weeks total. Nice and Slow by Usher. You can guess what that song's about. It was number one for 2 weeks. And then surprised the hell out of me to find this out. Celine Dion, the massive song from Titanic, My Heart Will Go On. You're thinking 12, 13 weeks. It was only number one for 1 week at the end of February and the beginning week of March. 2 weeks, that's it. And that song is goes down as one of the biggest songs in history. And it only had 2 weeks at number one. Meanwhile, some of these songs that barely classify as music from like the earlier 90s were getting 12, 13 weeks. It's crazy. But like I said, American Country Countdown, the big song and the big artist at the time was Tim McGraw. Just to See You Smile off his Everywhere album, which is probably his best album he's ever had. I mean, this song was huge. It was number one for 3 weeks, plus 4 weeks back in January for a 7-week run. That was unheard of almost in the time in country music. And then the final song of the month that was number one was What If I Said. That's one of them great duets. It's from Anita Cochran and Steve Wariner. And of course, Steve Wariner first became popular in the 80s, had a big run there, and then kind of died down in the early part of the 90s, and then had a career resurgence in the mid to late 90s. I think this is Anita Cochran's only number one, and I think her only hit ever, I believe. She just came out of nowhere and had Steve Wariner on this duet. Great song. But an album that was released this month I want to talk about by one of my all-time favorites who's passed away the last couple years, Daryl Singletary. And that man was country. He came out with the album Ain't It the Truth. It was his third studio album and one of the best country albums in my mind of all time. But it was around this time that the record labels were seeing the popularity of Garth Brooks and Tim McGraw, even though they were flat out country. It was that pop crossover they were looking for, and a guy like Daryl Singletary is not gonna cross over, because he doesn't. He even has a song called talking about he just stands there and sings. It's like a fantasy song about a record producer. It was after this because they dropped him from his label after this album because it didn't do well because it was too traditional to play on the radio, which is so stupid. But he made this parody songs like we're gonna dress you up, make you dance on the stage, and have all these fireworks go off. It's like yeah, you can do all that, but it's called I Still Sing This Way. You can do all this stuff, but I still sing this way. And I'm glad he did. But anyway, this song, Ain't It the Truth, or this album in general, was so great. His first single was called The Note. And you just have to hear this song. This song is country music. It is so good. One of the greatest songs I've heard in my life. It was previously recorded by Doug Supernall. I didn't hear that version until after I heard this. And honestly, I don't know which version I like better. They're both so good. The song is amazing. That's Where You're Wrong, another Stone Cold Country freaking classic that, of course, barely got played on the radio. And then one called My Baby's Lovin'. I've never heard that song, but they probably didn't play it on the radio around. They were, like I said, they don't want to play this type of music anymore. It sucked. Not the music, the radio stations. Then there was also some great album tracks. The one called You Ain't Heard Nothing Yet. Really one of those great songs where this guy in a bar is complaining, it's too noisy at his house, the kids are screaming, the wife's nagging him, blah, blah, blah. He's at the bar complaining, thinking, oh, my poor life. And then he's talking to this older guy who lost his wife and his kids. And he's saying, you ain't heard nothing yet. Kind of like a double pun type thing there, where it's like, you ain't heard nothing yet till all you hear is silence. One of those type of songs is one of them ones that really hits you in the heart. That's such a great song. And then the title track is called Ain't It the Truth. And it's basically saying, just going through the list of George Jones and just some of the great country classics and how about how honest and true country music is. If you want to describe to someone what true country music is, not this stuff today where they're clapping and snapping and rapping, and yes, I know. I didn't even mean for that to all to rhyme, but that's all country is today, is basically just pop or rap with some The instruments don't even sound real. It don't even sound like real steel guitar or real fiddle. It sounds like electronic. They pushed a button. But anyway, if you want to tell someone what real country music is, Ain't It the Truth is a song to play. It talks about how honest country is, because it's not just about the instruments. It's not about the southern accent or talking about trucks and all the cliches. It's when you come down to the heart of country music, it's about honesty, it's about truth, it's about heart. That's the best way I can put it there, and that song puts it perfect. But one more thing I want to talk about before we get out of here is the news, which I found this really strange. The Supreme Court of the United States Supreme Court decided to let the law known as Megan's Law stand. And what Megan's Law is I didn't even realize where this law came from, but it was a law that basically created the sex offender registry, which is, of course, where anyone that's, convicted of a crime, whether it's against children or even some crimes against adults that are, or of sexual nature, they'll have to register where they have to put their name, once they're released from prison, or, if you're lucky enough to get them to prison. Sometimes they just get freaking probation crappy deals, but sometimes, these convictions or even deals will come with having to be put on the registry for either for a certain amount of time or for life. But apparently people challenge this law as being, invasion of privacy. It's going to stop me from being able to work. Or good, it should. You're disgusting, and you did such disgusting stuff that you have to be registered on a list where you can't be within a certain amount of feet from a school. You can't live a certain amount of feet from like a school, or like, I don't know if it's a daycare or not. I don't know if they're included or not, or what it is. But anyway, you basically, anytime you go to, you have to register, so that way people know you're there, and they publish a list of this, and people are like, invasion of privacy, blah blah blah. I did my time. Well, whatever. It's not about doing your time or about your privacy. It's about protecting people. So people need to know if you live in their area. If someone's wanting to move into an area, they need to know. Am I moving next to a child? I ain't gonna say too many words on here. They'll ban me for using them, even though I'm not promoting anything like that. It's just, the way YouTube, Facebook, and all them are. But yeah, it's like, I can't believe that this is being challenged. It had to have been by the criminals. But anyway, thankfully the Supreme Court upheld this, and it still exists today, even though people get around it and they don't report where they're at. They're supposed to go, the police are supposed to go after people that don't do that. But of course, there's only so much time the police have and only so many resources, and you have to actually, have somebody say, hey, this person didn't report. It's not like they automatically know they didn't. But anyway, just strange to me, some of the laws and Supreme Court decisions they have to actually make. Like, someone actually got up in court and argued, I should be able to live where I want even though I did this to a kid. Like, no, you shouldn't. Anyway, not to get off on that tangent there. I'm sure somebody that watches every move I make is probably like, you're too... That's a whole other story. I've done multiple videos on that idiot. He don't deserve any mention. But anyway, to a positive note, we'll be talking about next week. We're jumping ahead, episode 67 next week. Furthest I've, in the timeline I've done an episode, we'll be going to July of 1999. This will be my 5th trip through 99. At this time I was 15 and about to enter the 9th grade. And also going through some big changes. Would be moving out of state to live with my dad by the end of 99. But also during July, I will tell you the story about, I told you the story many times before about skipping school to go in the woods. Well, day in court and punishment time is coming for old idiot me. And hear about me shoveling elephant poop in the freaking July heat as community service punishment. That'll be next week. Thank you for joining me. If you got any comments or questions, let me know. Having so much fun doing this. So just a couple weeks, I'll be having that surgery. So hopefully these podcasts continue. If not, someone else continue in my name. I don't care. Rip me off. I ain't making no money off it anyway. If you can make some money off it, go right ahead. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time.
And now, I predict the future. Next week, you'll be in the same time, same place, same station, for another hideous, hateful haul of horror.